All right, in this video, the main focus is repeating code a set number of times or an unknown number of times. And again, we have that in the notes here, right? And I find that if I want to repeat something a set number of times, like I know I want to repeat something 10 times or 500 times or whatever it is, I often will use a for loop because for loops are really clean, right? One line of code and I can generate this pattern of numbers to loop 500 times. And in this one here, I've got an example of doing a coin flip simulator. Right, so I'm going to loop 500 times. I'm going to get a random number, right? Math.random returns a value between 0 and 1. If it's less than 0.5, I got a head. Otherwise, I got a tail. And then I just keep a count. This is kind of an accumulation algorithm, right? I have a variable to keep track of a total, and I just add to that variable every time something happens, right? I get a head, add to it, I get a tail, add to it. At the end, I can output my results. So I'm actually just going to copy and paste this code so we can see this. And let's just throw it into here, paste, and hit run. And you can see, right, pretty close to 50-50. Not exactly, it's an experimental probability, right? But pretty close. Oh, this time it's a lot off, but it still ran exactly 500 times, right? So I know, and let's change that to 50, let's say. Actually, let's even do less. Let's just do 10. And 4 plus 6 is 10. 5 plus 5 is 10, right? This will always loop 10 times. So when I have a set number of times, for loop works great. Okay. Now, when I have a loop that I want to do, and I'm not sure how many times it will run, I often like to use a while loop for that, right? Because it's kind of like, well, this is true, and I don't know how long this will be true. So it's very similar scenario with a coin flip simulator, but this time I added another variable called num flips to keep track of how many flips I do, and I just increase that every time I loop, right? Because it doesn't matter what I get, I just want to keep track of the total number of flips. And I still do the same thing with that random value here, but this is going to keep looping until I get 100 heads, right? If num heads is less than 100, I'm going to loop. Once it equals 100, this won't be true anymore, and it'll stop the loop and go down to here. And who knows how long that's going to take? It could vary, right? So a while loop kind of makes more sense here to organize my code, I find anyway. So I'm just going to, again, copy and paste this and put it into our loop sandbox. And auto formats, there we go, run. And you'll see here it took 205 flips in order to get 100 heads. If I run it again, it only took 186 times, right? I don't know how many times this loop is going to run. As opposed to here, I always ran 500 times. Here, it's going to run while some condition is true. Once it's not true anymore, then it stops, and it just depends how long that's going to take. 208 that time, 193, right? You never know how long it's going to take to get those 100 heads. Okay. We'll talk about nested loops in a second. I thought another cool example could be something like this. Let's say I just wanted to prompt the user for a number. So ask user for a number between 1 and 10, right? So I'd say let num be assigned prompt enter a number between 1 and 10. Okay, and then what I'd like to do here is basically I could use a loop to say, well, what if they didn't enter a number between 1 and 10? And actually, first, let's be careful here. Let's add that plus sign to convert. Remember, prompt always returns a string, so I want to convert that to a number value. And what I'd like to do is if they don't enter a valid number within the range 1 and 10, I want to just ask them the question over and over again until they give me proper input. And it could never run, or it could run 10 times. You never know. So I'm going to use a while loop here. While num is less than 1 or num is greater than 10, right? So it's not valid input. They were supposed to give me a number between 1 and 10. So if it's less than 1 or if it's greater than 10, it's not valid. We could also play around with Boolean expressions here. You could actually also do like a well not num is greater than or equal to 1 and num is less or equal to 10, right? So this is basically saying, hey, the number is valid, right? It's between 1 and 10, and then the not just means, well, that's not true. So either way will work with the or, with the and the not. So while it's not true, I'm going to run this code again, but I don't need the let because I've already declared num. And maybe I could change my prompt to say, I'm sorry, I need a number between 1 and 10. And then once that's done, maybe I can do a little alert that says, thank you for the number, whatever. Oops, I did a single quote. That's fine, that works too. Okay, so just a quick, we'll run this program, but basically what it's doing, right, is saying, let's give me a number. If that number is not within the range that I wanted, it'll prompt them again. And that'll keep looping until this is true, which means that, until this is false, right? While this is true, it'll run this. Once this is false, that means that they did give me a valid number, and I'll say thank you. Let's try that. So let's start with doing a valid number. Let's say if I do 5, it just says thank you for the number, right? So this test, right? This evaluated to true because the number was between 1 and 10. So not true is false. So this was false, so it just said thank you. Now if I do an invalid number like 20, this will be false, so not false is true, which means it'll run this, right? So it's not a valid number. And I can keep doing that. 30, nope, 40, negative 20, and then finally I'll do 9, and it'll say thank you. Okay, so we don't know how many times this loop will run, right? It's just based on this condition, and while loops are really good for testing different conditions like that, right? I could give the answer right away, or it could take me 2 tries, or it could take me 20 tries, who knows? Anyway, hopefully that makes sense. That is all I wanted to focus on here for repeating loops. And like I said, a set number of times, I often find for loops more useful. Unknown number of times, while loops come in handy. Okay, hope that made sense. Take care and see you in the next video.